Marcus Richardson adjusted his designer tie as his black Mercedes pulled up to the downtown financial district. At 35, he had built an empire from nothing, transforming a small tech startup into a multi-million-dollar corporation. His days were filled with board meetings, investment deals, and charity galas where he wrote checks that could change lives with a simple signature. The morning air was crisp as he stepped out of his car, briefcase in hand. His assistant Sarah had scheduled back-to-back meetings until evening, but Marcus thrived on the pressure. Success had become his addiction, filling the void that had existed in his heart for over a decade. As he walked toward his office building, something caught his eye across the street. A woman sat huddled against the brick wall of an old bookstore, two small children pressed close to her sides. Her dark hair was matted and dirty, her clothes worn thin from too many nights spent outdoors. But there was something familiar about the way she held her head, the gentle way she spoke to the children. Marcus stopped walking. His heart began to race as memories flooded back. Could it really be her? After all these years? The woman looked up, and their eyes met across the busy street. Even through the grime and exhaustion, Marcus recognized those deep brown eyes that had once looked at him with such love and hope. It was Elena Vasquez, his college sweetheart, the woman he had planned to marry before life tore them apart. Elena's face went pale. She quickly gathered the two children closer as if trying to shield them from his gaze. The little boy couldn't have been more than 4 years old, with dark curly hair and bright, curious eyes. The girl was slightly older, maybe 6, with Elena's delicate features but a defiant tilt to her chin. Marcus felt his world shift. 15 years ago, Elena had been a pre-med student with dreams of becoming a doctor. She was passionate, intelligent, and the most beautiful person he had ever known. They had planned their future together during long nights in the campus library, whispering about the life they would build after graduation. But then his father's business had collapsed, leaving the family in massive debt. Marcus had to drop out of college to work 3 jobs just to keep his mother from losing their house. Elena had tried to stay in touch, but the distance and pressure had slowly pulled them apart. The last time they spoke, she had gotten into medical school in California while he was working 18-hour days in a factory. Now, seeing her like this, Marcus felt a pain deeper than anything he had experienced in business. How had the brilliant, determined woman he once loved ended up living on the streets with 2 children? He started to cross the street, but Elena stood up quickly, taking each child by the hand. She shook her head slightly and began walking away, her pace urgent but careful not to frighten the children. "Elena, wait," Marcus called out, but she didn't turn around. He watched them disappear around the corner, his chest tight with emotions he thought he had buried long ago. The morning meeting suddenly seemed meaningless. His assistant's voice calling from the building entrance sounded distant and unimportant. Marcus spent the rest of the day distracted, his mind replaying the brief encounter. During his lunch meeting with investors, he found himself staring out the window at the street where he had seen her. His business partner noticed his lack of focus and asked if everything was all right. "Just tired," Marcus replied, but inside he was anything but tired. He was awake for the first time in years. That evening, instead of attending the charity gala he had planned, Marcus drove back to the area where he had seen Elena. He parked his car and walked the streets for hours, looking into doorways and checking the spaces where homeless families might seek shelter for the night. He found them behind a grocery store, settling down for the night with a thin blanket and a small backpack that seemed to contain everything they owned. The children were sharing a small container of food, while Elena watched them with the same protective love he remembered from when she used to care for injured animals they found on campus. Marcus approached slowly, not wanting to startle them. "Elena," he said softly. She looked up, her body tense and ready to run. "What do you want, Marcus?" Her voice was hoarse, worn down by years of hardship he couldn't imagine. But underneath the exhaustion, he heard the same strength that had made him fall in love with her all those years ago. "I want to help," he said simply. Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Help? Like you helped 15 years ago when you stopped calling?" When you disappeared from my life without even saying goodbye? The accusation hit him hard because it was true. He had been so consumed with saving his family's financial situation that he had abandoned the most important person in his life. I know I hurt you. I know I made mistakes. But please, let me help you now. The little boy looked up at Marcus with curious eyes. Are you the man from the fancy car, Mama? Elena's expression softened as she looked at her son. Yes, mijo. This is someone Mama used to know a long time ago. Marcus knelt down to be at the children's eye level. What are your names? I'm Diego, the boy said proudly. And this is my sister Carmen. We're twins, but I'm older by 3 minutes. Carmen studied Marcus with intelligent eyes that reminded him so much of Elena. Are you rich? She asked with the blunt honesty that only children possess. Carmen, that's not polite, Elena said quickly, but Marcus smiled. It's okay, he said, to Elena, then turned back to Carmen. I have been very fortunate in my business. Then why don't you help people like us? Carmen asked. The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. Here was a 6-year-old asking him the very question he had been avoiding for years. He donated money to charities and attended fundraisers, but had he ever really looked at the faces of the people who needed help? Elena stood up, pulling the children closer to her. We should go. But as she gathered their few possessions, Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. Both children had a small cough, and Diego's lips had a slight blue tinge that suggested he wasn't getting enough oxygen. Living on the streets in the approaching winter could be dangerous for anyone, but for children, it could be deadly. Elena, please, Marcus said urgently. At least let me get the children somewhere, warm for the night. There's a storm coming and they need proper shelter. Elena looked at the darkening sky, then at her children's faces. For a moment, Marcus saw the internal battle she was fighting between pride and maternal instinct. The first drops of rain began to fall, and Diego started coughing harder. Elena closed her eyes, and when she opened them, Marcus saw the same determination that had driven her to pursue medicine all those years ago. One night, she said quietly, just until the storm passes. Marcus led Elena and the twins to his Mercedes, opening the back door for them. He noticed how Elena hesitated before getting in, her hand protectively on Diego's shoulder, as the boy's cough worsened. The leather seats were probably worth more than what most families spent on rent, but Elena focused only on making sure her children were comfortable. As they drove through the city, Marcus caught glimpses of Elena in the rearview mirror. She was studying everything, the GPS system, the phone mounted on the dashboard, the way other cars moved aside when they saw his expensive vehicle. Her silence spoke volumes about how different their lives had become. Where are we going? Carmen asked, pressing her face against the window to watch the bright city lights flash by. To a hotel, Marcus replied. Somewhere warm where you can rest properly. Elena tensed. We can't afford a hotel, Marcus. I thought you meant a shelter. You're not paying for anything, Marcus said firmly. And I'm not taking you to a shelter where you might get separated or where Diego can't get the medical attention he clearly needs. Elena's protective instincts flared. There's nothing wrong with my son. But even as she said it, Diego had another coughing fit that left him gasping for air. Elena rubbed his back gently, whispering soothing words in Spanish that Marcus remembered from their college days when she would comfort him after particularly difficult exams. They pulled up to the Grand Plaza Hotel, one of the most luxurious establishments in the city. The doorman hurried to open their car doors, his professional smile never wavering despite Elena's worn appearance and the children's obvious poverty. In the elegant lobby, Elena looked completely out of place, but she held her head high with dignity that impressed Marcus more than any business presentation he had ever witnessed. The desk clerk recognized Marcus immediately and prepared to offer his usual penthouse suite. I need 2 connecting rooms, Marcus said. The family will need privacy, and I want the children to have their own space to play. Elena started to protest, but Marcus gently took her arm. Please, let me do this much. As they rode the elevator to the 15th floor, Diego swayed on his feet, his breathing becoming more labored. Elena caught him before he could fall, and Marcus saw the fear flash across her face. "How long has he been sick?" Marcus asked quietly. "A few weeks," Elena admitted. "It started as just a cold, but living outside in the rain and cold air has made it worse." The hotel rooms were magnificent, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, marble bathrooms, and beds that could fit a family of 6. But Marcus watched Elena's face, and all he saw was exhaustion and worry for her children. "There are clean clothes in the closet," Marcus explained. "The hotel keeps a selection of different sizes for guests, and room service can bring anything you need. To eat." Carmen ran to the window, pressing her hands against the glass. "Mama, look how high up we are. I can see the whole world." Elena smiled for the first time since Marcus had found them. "Not the whole world, mija, but it is beautiful." Diego climbed onto one of the chairs, but another coughing fit doubled him over. This time, Marcus saw flecks of blood in his palm when the boy pulled his hand away from his mouth. "Elena, he needs a doctor. Now." Elena's composure finally cracked. "Do you think I don't know that? Do you think I haven't tried to get help for my children? Do you know what happens when someone like me walks into a hospital with 2 children and no insurance? They treat us like criminals and send us away with aspirin." Marcus felt the weight of privilege he had never fully understood before. "What if I went with you? What if money wasn't an issue?" Elena looked at him with a mixture of hope and suspicion. "Why would you do that? We're nothing to you anymore. We're strangers." Marcus sat down across from her, choosing his words carefully. "Maybe we're strangers now, but you were never nothing to me, Elena. When I lost you, I lost the best part of myself. I've spent 15 years building a fortune, but I've never built a life worth living." Elena studied his face, searching for the young man she had once loved in the successful businessman sitting before her. "You have everything anyone could want. I have money and businesses and people who work for me because I pay them well. But I don't have anyone who cares if I come home at night. I don't have anyone who knows how I take my coffee or what makes me laugh. I haven't had that since you." Diego's breathing became more shallow, and Elena immediately moved to his side. "We need to get him to a hospital." Marcus was already reaching for his phone. "My driver will meet us downstairs. I know the chief of staff at Children's Medical Center. Diego will get the best care available." As they prepared to leave the hotel, Carmen tugged on Marcus's jacket. "Are you going to take care of us now?" The simple question from a 6-year-old cut through all of Marcus's carefully constructed walls. "I'm going to try, sweetheart, if your mama lets me." Elena overheard the exchange and met Marcus's eyes across the room. "Don't make promises you can't keep. They've been disappointed enough." At the hospital, Marcus's name opened doors that had been closed to Elena for weeks. Within minutes, Diego was being examined by Dr. Patricia Chen, one of the city's best pediatric specialists. Elena held her son's hand as the doctor listened to his chest and ordered immediate x-rays. While they waited for results, Marcus sat with Carmen in the children's area of the emergency room. She was coloring a picture of a house with a big yard and lots of flowers. "Is this where you want to live?" Marcus asked. Carmen nodded seriously. "Mama used to tell us stories about the house she grew up in. It had a garden where her grandmother grew vegetables and flowers. Mama said maybe someday we could have a garden too." Marcus felt something shift inside his chest. "What else did your mama tell you about when she was younger?" "She said she used to study medicine to help people get better, but then something sad happened and she couldn't be a doctor anymore. Diego and me came along and she had to take care of us instead." The pieces of Elena's story began to fall into place for Marcus. Somehow her dreams of medical school had been derailed, and she had ended up alone with 2 children to raise. "Doctor," Chen returned with the X-ray results and a concerned expression. "Diego has pneumonia, and it's quite advanced. In children his age, this can become very serious very quickly. He needs to be admitted immediately for IV antibiotics and oxygen therapy." Elena's face went white. "How much will that cost?" "Don't Worry about the cost, Marcus said immediately. Whatever he needs. Dr. Chen looked between them, trying to understand their relationship. Are you the father? Elena answered before Marcus could speak. No. He's an old friend who's helping us. But as they filled out the hospital paperwork, Marcus realized that being labeled as an old friend felt wrong. These children needed stability, medical care, and a future. Elena needed support and a chance to rebuild her life. As Diego was settled into a hospital room with clean sheets and proper medical equipment, Marcus made a decision that would change all their lives forever. He pulled Elena aside in the hallway. I want to help you get back on your feet, not just with the medical bills, but with everything. Housing, job training, whatever you need to build a stable life for you and the children. Elena shook her head. I can't accept charity, Marcus. I won't be your project to make yourself feel better about the past. This isn't charity, and it's not about the past. It's about the future. Your children deserve a chance, Elena. And maybe, if you'll let me, I can be part of that future. Elena looked through the window at Diego, who was sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks, his breathing already improved with proper medication. Carmen was curled up in a chair beside his bed, finally able to rest without worrying about where they would sleep or whether they would be safe. What exactly are you proposing? Elena asked quietly. Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that his next words would either bridge the gap between them or widen it forever. Marcus looked directly into Elena's eyes, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I'm proposing that you and the children come live with me while we figure out what comes next. Not as charity, but as a chance for all of us to heal old wounds and build something new. Elena stepped back, shaking her head. Marcus, you don't understand, it's been 15 years. We're not the same people we were in college. I have responsibilities, complications in my life that you can't possibly imagine. Then tell me, Marcus said. Help me understand what happened to you. Help me understand how the woman who was going to change the world ended up afraid to accept help for her sick child. Elena was quiet for a long moment, watching Diego sleep through the hospital room window. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. After you stopped calling, I threw myself into my studies even harder. I got into medical school in California just like we planned. But in my second year, I met someone. Robert was a resident, older, charming. He said he loved me, said we would build a practice together after I graduated. Marcus felt a stab of jealousy, but he remained silent, letting her continue. When I got pregnant with the twins, Robert promised we would get married after I finished school. But medical school with a pregnancy was harder than I expected. I had complications, had to take time off. Robert started becoming distant, said I was holding him back from his career. Elena's hands clenched into fists as she remembered. The day I gave birth to Diego and Carmen, Robert disappeared. He left a note saying he couldn't handle the responsibility, that he was moving to another state to start a fellowship program. I never saw him again. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest at this man he had never met, but Elena wasn't finished. I tried to continue school as a single mother with twins, but it was impossible. The medical program required so many hours, and I had no family support. My parents had died in a car accident while I was in my first year of medical school. I had to drop out to take care of the babies. Elena wiped away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I took jobs wherever I could find them. Waitressing, cleaning offices, anything that would let me bring the children with me or work around their schedules. But it was never enough. The cost of childcare, rent, medical bills when they got sick, it all added up faster than I could keep up. Marcus wanted to reach out and comfort her, but he sensed she needed to tell her story without interruption. 2 years ago, I got sick, really sick. I had to stay in the hospital for 3 weeks with a kidney infection that nearly killed me. When I got out, I couldn't work for months. We lost our apartment, then the place we moved to after that. The children and I have been living in shelters, in my car when I had one, and on the streets for the past 8 months. Elena finally looked at Marcus, her eyes filled with a pain so deep it took his breath away. So you see, I'm not the person you remember. I'm not someone who can be fixed with money or a nice place to live. I'm broken, Marcus. And my children deserve better than a mother who couldn't protect them from this life. Marcus stepped closer, his voice firm but gentle. You're wrong. You are exactly the person I remember. The Elena I knew was fierce and determined and would do anything to protect the people she loved. That woman is standing right in front of me. How can you say that? Look where I ended up. I see a woman who sacrificed her dreams to care for her children. I see someone who kept 2 kids alive and safe on the streets for months. I see a mother who would rather live in pride and poverty than accept help she thought might come with strings attached. Elena, you didn't fail your children. Society failed you. Elena shook her head, but Marcus continued. Do you know what I did when my father's business collapsed? I was so focused on saving my family's financial situation that I abandoned everything else that mattered, including you. I thought success was about money, about building an empire, but what kind of success leaves you empty inside? Through the window, they could see Carmen had woken up and was sitting beside Diego's bed, holding his hand and telling him a story in a soft voice. Look at them, Marcus said. Despite everything they've been through, those children are kind and brave and curious about the world. That's because of you, Elena. That's because of the mother you are. Elena watched her children, her expression softening. They are pretty amazing, aren't they? They're incredible, and they deserve to have their mother's dreams restored, not abandoned. Marcus took a deep breath. I have a proposition for you. Not charity, but a partnership. Elena raised an eyebrow. What kind of partnership? I need someone to help me figure out how to actually help people instead of just writing checks to charities I never really research. You understand poverty and struggle in a way I never will. You could help me make my money do real good in the world. Elena looked skeptical. I don't have any business experience. But you have life experience. You know what families like yours actually need. Help me start a foundation that provides real support. Not just temporary fixes, but long-term solutions. Housing, job training, medical care, education. Programs that help people rebuild their lives with dignity. Elena was quiet, considering his words. And in exchange? In exchange, you and the children live with me while you get back on your feet. Not as my guests, but as my partners in this work. Take time to recover from everything you've been through. Let the children get healthy and start school in a safe environment. And when you're ready, if you want to go back to medical school, I'll support that too. Elena laughed, but it wasn't a bitter laugh this time. Medical school? Marcus, I'm 35, years old with twin 6-year-olds. That dream died a long time ago. Dreams don't die unless we let them. I've learned that the hard way. Marcus gestured toward Diego's hospital room. What if I told you that the doctor treating Diego right now went back to medical school at age 40 after raising 3 kids as a single parent? What if I told you there are programs specifically designed to help people in your situation? Elena stared at him. You're serious. I'm completely serious about all of it. The foundation, the living arrangement, supporting your education if that's what you want. But most of all, I'm serious about wanting you and the children to be part of my life again. Elena walked closer to the window, watching Carmen brush Diego's hair away from his forehead with the same gentle touch Elena had used to comfort Marcus during their college years. There's something else you should know, Elena said quietly. About the twins' father. Marcus felt his stomach tighten, but he nodded for her to continue. His name is on their birth certificates, but he's never been in their lives. Not a phone call, not a birthday card, nothing. Legally, he has rights as their biological father, but he signed papers when they were born giving up those rights. I never pursued him for child support because I was afraid he might try to take them away from me. Marcus processed this information. Are you afraid he might cause problems now? Elena nodded. If he finds out about you, about your money, he might suddenly develop an interest in being a father. People can be very motivated by financial gain. Marcus understood her concern, but it didn't change his determination. Then we'll make sure your rights as their mother are protected. I know, excellent family law attorneys. But Elena, I need you to know something. Elena turned to face him fully. I'm not asking you to trust me because of who we used to be. I'm asking you to trust me because of who we could become. Together, we could create something meaningful. Not just for us, but for families like yours who are struggling right now. Elena looked at her children one more time, then back at Marcus. If I say yes to this, there have to be ground rules, clear boundaries. I won't be dependent on you financially forever, and I won't let the children get attached to you unless you're prepared to be in their lives permanently. Marcus nodded solemnly. I understand. And Elena, I'm not going anywhere this time. Whatever happens between us, I will not abandon those children. Elena studied his face for a long moment, searching for any sign of insincerity or hidden motives. Finally, she extended her hand to shake his. Partners, she said. Marcus shook her hand, feeling like he was making the most important business deal of his life. Partners. As they shook hands, neither of them noticed Carmen watching them through the hospital room window, her face bright with hope for the first time in months. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in the doorway of what had once been his home office, watching Elena help Carmen and Diego arrange their new bedroom. The children had been discharged from the hospital after Diego's pneumonia cleared up completely, and the transformation in all of them was remarkable. Marcus had converted 2 rooms of his penthouse apartment into a family area. Diego and Carmen shared a bedroom filled with bunk beds, toys, and books, while Elena had her own space with a desk where she could work on the foundation planning. The apartment, which had once felt cold and empty despite its expensive furnishings, now buzzed with the energy of family life. Marcus, come help us decide where to put the bookshelf, Carmen called out. She had appointed herself the family's interior decorator and took her job very seriously. As Marcus entered the room, Diego ran up to him holding a picture book. Will you read to me tonight? Elena said you might know some different stories than the ones she tells us. Marcus knelt down to Diego's level. I'd love to read to you. What kind of stories do you like best? Adventure stories where people help each other, Diego said solemnly. Carmen likes princess stories, but I like the ones where regular people do brave things. Marcus glanced at Elena, who was watching this interaction with a careful expression. Over the past 3 weeks, they had slowly begun to rebuild their relationship, but there were still moments of tension and uncertainty. The foundation work had given them a professional way to spend time together while they figured out their personal dynamics. Elena's insights into poverty and homelessness were invaluable, but more than that, Marcus was rediscovering the brilliant woman he had fallen in love with years ago. How was your meeting with the legal team today? Marcus asked Elena as they helped the children organize their clothes. Elena's face lit up with excitement. They think we can have the foundation officially established within a month. And Marcus, the programs we've outlined could help hundreds of families get back on their feet. Real sustainable help, not just temporary fixes. Marcus loved seeing Elena passionate about something again. The defeated, exhausted woman he had found on the street was being replaced by someone who had hope for the future. There's something else? Elena continued, her voice becoming more hesitant. I spoke with Dr. Martinez at the community college today about their pre-med program for non-traditional students. Marcus stopped folding Diego's shirts. And? She thinks I could test out of several classes based on what I completed before. If I started part-time next semester, I could finish the prerequisites in 2 years, then apply to medical school again. Elena paused, then added quietly, that is if you really meant what you said about supporting that dream. Before Marcus could answer, Carmen piped up from where she was arranging her stuffed animals. Mama, are you going to be a doctor like the one who helped Diego get better? Elena smiled at her daughter. Maybe, mija. It would take a long time, and I would have to study very hard. Would you still take care of us? Diego asked, suddenly looking worried. Elena immediately went to her son and hugged him. Of course, mi amor. You and Carmen are the most important thing in my life. Everything I do is to make a better life for us. Marcus watched this exchange, remembering similar fears from his own childhood, when his father's long work hours had sometimes made him feel forgotten. "Diego, can I tell you something?" The little boy nodded seriously. "When people love each other the way your mama loves you and Carmen, that love doesn't get smaller when they have to work or study. It actually gets bigger because they're working to make life better for the people they care about." Diego considered this. Like when Mama worked lots of jobs before, but she still took care of us? Exactly like that. Your mama has always been taking care of you, even when things were very hard. Elena met Marcus's eyes across the room, and he saw gratitude there along with something else, something that looked like the beginnings of trust. That evening, as promised, Marcus read bedtime stories to both children. Elena sat in the doorway, listening as he did different voices for all the characters in Diego's adventure book, then switched to a gentler tone for Carmen's princess story. After the children were asleep, Marcus and Elena sat in his living room reviewing foundation documents. But Marcus found himself watching Elena more than reading the papers. "What?" Elena asked, noticing his attention. "I was just thinking about how different this feels from 3 weeks ago. Having you here, having the children's voices in the apartment, it feels like a home for the first time in years." Elena set down her pen. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Marcus braced himself. "Okay. Do you see us as a family, or are we a project for you? Something to fix your guilty conscience about the past?" Marcus had been expecting this question, but it still hit him hard. "Can I ask you something first?" Elena nodded. "When you look at me now, do you see the boy you loved in college, or do you see a rich man who can solve your problems?" Elena was quiet for a moment. "Both, I think, and that scares me." Marcus leaned forward. "It scares me too, because I see the woman I never stopped loving, but I also see someone who has every reason not to trust me. I abandoned you once, Elena. I know you can't forget that." "I don't want to forget it," Elena said softly. "But I don't want to live in it either. What I want to know is what happens when the novelty wears off. When Diego has a tantrum in public or Carmen gets sick in the middle of the night. When I'm stressed about school and work and not the grateful, gracious person you remember." Marcus smiled. "You were never gracious, you were stubborn and argumentative, and you challenged me on everything." Elena looked surprised, then laughed. "I was not argumentative. You once spent 2 hours arguing with me about the proper way to load a dishwasher. Because you were doing it wrong." Marcus laughed too, and for a moment they were just two people remembering when they were young and everything seemed possible. "Elena," Marcus said more seriously, "I can't promise I'll be perfect at this. I've spent 15 years focused only on business and making money. I don't know how to be part of a family, but I want to learn. And not because I feel guilty about the past, but because you and Diego and Carmen make me want to be a better person than I've been." Elena studied his face. "What if it doesn't work out between us romantically? What if we can't get back what we had? Then we'll figure out how to be friends and co-parents to children who need stability. But Elena, I have to tell you something else." Elena waited. "I never stopped loving you. Not for one day in 15 years. I convinced myself I had moved on, but seeing you again made me realize that everything I've built was just me trying to fill the hole you left in my life." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Marcus, you don't have to say anything back. I just needed you to know. Whatever we decide about our future, you should know that my feelings for you aren't based on guilt or pity or some need to play hero. They're based on love I never let go of." Elena was quiet for so long that Marcus began to worry he had said too much too soon. But then she spoke. "I loved you too. All these years, through everything that happened, I loved you too. I was so angry at you for leaving, but I never stopped loving you." Marcus felt his heart racing. "And now?" Elena smiled, the first completely unguarded smile he had seen from her since they reunited. "Now I think maybe we have a chance to build something even better than what we had before. Something more mature, more honest, more real." Marcus reached across the coffee table and took her hand. "I'd like that very much." As they sat holding hands in the quiet apartment, with the sound of the children sleeping peacefully down the hall, both of them felt something they hadn't experienced in years. Hope for a future filled with love, purpose, and the kind of happiness that comes from choosing to build a life together rather than just falling into one. 6 months had passed since Marcus found Elena and the twins on the street, and their new life together had settled into a rhythm that felt both natural and miraculous. The foundation, which they had named Second Chances, was about to open its doors to help its first families. Marcus stood in the renovated warehouse that would serve as their headquarters, watching Elena review applications with their newly hired social worker. She wore professional clothes now instead of the worn rags from the streets, but more importantly, she carried herself with the confidence he remembered from their college days. "This family has been living in their car for 3 months, Elena was saying, pointing to one of the applications. 2 parents, 3 children under 8 years old. The father lost his job when the factory closed, and they couldn't keep up with rent payments. They need immediate housing and job training for both parents." Marcus marveled at how Elena had thrown herself into this work. She understood the applications in ways that went beyond the paperwork, because she had lived through similar struggles. Her insights had shaped every program they offered, from emergency housing to job placement to childcare assistance. "What's our capacity for this month?" Marcus asked, joining their discussion. "We can help 12 families get into transitional housing, and we have job training slots for 20 adults," replied Sarah Martinez, their social worker. "The local businesses have committed to interviewing our graduates for 43 positions." Elena smiled at these numbers. "Remember when you used to measure success by stock prices and profit margins?" Marcus laughed. "Now I measure it by how many children get to sleep in real beds tonight." The transformation hadn't been easy. Marcus had to learn that throwing money at problems wasn't always the solution. Some of their early attempts to help families had failed because they hadn't understood the complex web of issues that kept people trapped in poverty. Elena had taught him that lasting change required addressing not just immediate needs but also the underlying causes of homelessness. "Mr. Richardson?" Carmen's voice called from across the warehouse. She and Diego had become regular fixtures at the foundation, often doing homework in the children's area while Elena worked. Marcus walked over to where Carmen was sitting at a small desk, coloring. "What's up, sweetheart?" "I drew a picture of our family," Carmen said proudly, holding up her artwork. The drawing showed 4 stick figures holding hands in front of a house. The tallest figure wore a tie and had dark hair like Marcus. The second tallest had long hair like Elena. The 2 smaller figures were clearly meant to be Carmen and Diego. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. Over the past months, the children had gradually begun treating him less like a stranger and more like a father figure. Diego had started asking Marcus to help with his math homework, and Carmen often sought his opinion on important 6-year-old matters like which dress looked prettiest or whether dinosaurs could really fly. "It's beautiful, Carmen. Can I keep it for my office?" Carmen beamed. "Yes, Elena said maybe we could have a real house someday instead of living in your apartment." Marcus glanced at Elena, who had overheard the conversation. They had talked about finding a house together, but they were still taking their relationship slowly for the children's sake. That evening, after the twins were asleep, Marcus and Elena sat on his apartment balcony overlooking the city. Elena was studying for her pre-med classes, which she had started 3 months earlier. Despite her fears about returning to school at 35, she was excelling in her coursework. "How was organic chemistry today?" Marcus asked, bringing her a cup of coffee. Elena groaned dramatically. "Horrible. I'm convinced the professor enjoys watching students suffer. But I got an A on my last exam, so I guess the suffering is working." Marcus sat beside her, watching the city lights twinkle below. "Do you ever regret this? Coming back into my life, starting over with everything?" Elena looked up from her textbook. "Do you mean, do I regret leaving the streets where my children were slowly getting sicker and I was slowly losing hope?" "No, Marcus, I don't regret that. But do you regret us? This complicated situation we've created?" Elena marked her place in the book and turned to face him fully. "What we have isn't complicated. What's complicated is that we're both afraid of admitting how well it's working. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I mean that Diego asked me yesterday when you were going to officially become his dad. I mean that Carmen introduces you to people as her Marcus with the same pride she uses when she talks about me. I mean that we've been tiptoeing around the fact that we're already functioning as a family. Marcus felt his heart racing. What are you saying? Elena took his hand. I'm saying that I love you. Not the memory of who you used to be. Not gratitude for what you've done for us. But you. The man who reads bedtime stories in different voices. Who celebrates when Diego ties his shoes correctly. Who stays up late helping me with chemistry homework even though you hated science in college. Marcus squeezed her hand. Elena, I love you too. More than I ever thought possible. But are you sure this is what you want? Marriage, a ready-made family, all the responsibility that comes with it? Elena laughed. Marcus, I've been a single mother living on the streets for months. I think I understand responsibility. The question is whether you're ready for it. Marcus stood up and walked to the edge of the balcony, looking out at the city where they had both struggled and succeeded, in different ways. There's something I need to tell you. Elena waited, sensing the importance of whatever he was about to say. Last week I had a meeting with my lawyers about updating my will and my business arrangements. Marcus turned back to Elena. I want to make sure that if anything happens to me, you and the children are completely taken care of, not just financially but legally. I want to adopt Diego and Carmen officially if they want me to and if you'll let me. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Marcus, I know it's a big step, and I know we haven't talked about marriage yet, but, Elena, those children are already my family in every way that matters. I want to make it official. I want to make sure they're protected and that they know they belong to someone who will never abandon them. Elena stood up and walked to him, taking both his hands in hers. They would love that. They already think of you as their father. And what about their mother? What does she think about making this official? Elena smiled through her tears. Their mother thinks it's about time you asked. Marcus laughed and pulled Elena into his arms. Is that a yes? That's a yes to adoption, yes to marriage, yes to building a life together, and yes to whatever comes next. As Marcus kissed Elena on the balcony overlooking the city where they had lost each other and found each other again, he realized that true wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts or business deals. It was measured in moments like this, with the woman he loved in his arms and the sound of their children sleeping safely in the next room. Inside the apartment, Carmen stirred in her sleep and smiled, dreaming of the house she had drawn that day, where her family would live happily ever after. 2 years later, Elena stood at the podium of the medical school auditorium, wearing a crisp white coat with her name embroidered on the chest, Dr. Elena Richardson. The journey back to medicine had been challenging, but with Marcus's support and her own determination, she had not only completed her pre-med requirements but had been accepted into an accelerated program for mature students. In the audience, Marcus sat in the front row with Diego and Carmen, now 8 years old and proudly, holding a banner that read, "Congratulations, Mom." Diego had overcome his health issues completely and was now an energetic boy who wanted to be a doctor like his mother. Carmen had discovered a love for mathematics and often helped other children at the foundation with their homework. When I first returned to medical school, Elena said into the microphone, I thought I was too old, too far behind, too burdened with responsibilities to succeed. But I learned that sometimes our biggest challenges become our greatest strengths. Marcus smiled as he listened to his wife speak. They had been married for 18 months now, and the adoption of Diego and Carmen had been finalized just 6 months after their wedding. The children had been excited to officially become Richardson children, though they had already been calling Marcus Dad for over a year. The foundation my husband and I started has taught me that healing doesn't just happen in hospitals, Elena continued. It happens when families have safe places to live, when children have enough food to eat, when parents have opportunities to rebuild their lives with dignity. The Second Chances Foundation had grown beyond anything Marcus had imagined. They now operated in 3 cities, had helped over 500 families transition from homelessness to stable housing, and had a 92% success rate in long-term housing retention. Elena's voice grew stronger as she addressed her graduating class. We are becoming doctors at a time when healthcare is about more than treating illness. We have the opportunity to address the root causes of poor health, poverty, homelessness, lack of education, social isolation. We can be healers not just of bodies, but of communities. After the ceremony, the Richardson family celebrated at their favorite restaurant. The children were animated with excitement, talking over each other as they congratulated their mother. "Mom, when you're a real doctor, can you fix everyone who's sick?" Diego asked seriously. Elena smiled at her son. "I'll do my best, mijo. But remember, being a doctor means I'll help people get better, not that I can fix everything." Carmen, Ever, Practical had different concerns. "Will you still have time to help me with my math homework?" "Of course, sweetheart. Being a doctor is my job, but being your mom is who I am." Marcus watched this exchange with deep contentment. The woman who had once felt broken and worthless was now a confident doctor about to start her residency in family medicine. The children, who had once coughed from cold and hunger, were now healthy, happy kids who excelled in school and looked forward to the future with excitement. Later that evening, after the children were asleep in their rooms of the house they had bought the Yao. Previous year, Marcus and Elena sat in their garden. Elena was tending to the vegetables and flowers she had planted, fulfilling the dream she used to tell the children about when they lived on the streets. "Remember when Carmen drew that picture of a house with a garden?" Elena asked, deadheading. "Roses in the evening light." "I remember everything about those early days," Marcus replied, "including how scared I was that you would disappear again." Elena looked at him with surprise. "You were scared I would leave?" Marcus nodded. "I was terrified that once you got back on your feet you would realize you didn't need me anymore, that maybe you were only staying because you felt obligated." Elena set down her gardening shears and moved to sit beside Marcus on their porch swing. "Do you still worry about that?" Marcus considered the question. "No. What we have now is built on choice, not necessity. You chose to love me again. We chose to build this life together. That's stronger than anything we had when we were young." Elena took his hand, noting how much more comfortable they were with affection now compared to those tentative early months. "You know what I realized during medical school?" "What?" "All those years I thought my dreams were dead. They were actually just sleeping. And sometimes sleeping dreams grow stronger than the ones that never faced any obstacles." Marcus squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you, not just for becoming a doctor, but for never giving up on yourself or the children, even when everything seemed hopeless." Elena smiled. "I had a good reason to keep fighting. I had Diego and Carmen, and eventually, I had you again too." From inside the house came the sound of Diego coughing, and both parents immediately tensed with old instincts. But when they listened more carefully, they realized he was just laughing at something he was reading in bed. "Old habits," Elena said with a laugh. "Good habits," Marcus corrected. "Being protective of the people you love is never a bad thing." As they swung gently in the evening air, Elena thought about how dramatically their lives had changed. "The foundation helped its first family get into permanent housing this week," she mentioned. "The Garcias?" "Yes. Mrs. Garcia starts her new job on Monday, and the children are enrolled in a great school. It's exactly what we hoped would happen when we started this program." Marcus felt the satisfaction that had replaced his old obsession with profit margins. "How many families are we working with now?" 43 active cases across all 3 locations, and we have funding committed for expansion into 2 more cities next year. Marcus marveled at how naturally Elena spoke about budgets and program outcomes. She had become an equal partner in running the foundation while also preparing for her medical career. "What specialty are you thinking about for after your residency?" Marcus asked. Elena was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about community medicine, working with underserved populations, maybe eventually opening a clinic that specifically serves homeless families." Marcus wasn't surprised by this answer. Elena's experiences had given her a passion for helping people who fell through the cracks of the healthcare system. Whatever you want to do, we'll make it work, Marcus said. The foundation, your medical career, the children's needs, we'll figure it out together. Elena leaned against Marcus's shoulder. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't seen us that day? If you had driven straight to your office instead of stopping? Marcus had wondered about this many times. I think somehow we would have found our way back to each other eventually. Maybe not that day, maybe not that year, but eventually. You really believe that? I believe that some connections are strong enough to survive anything. Time, distance, mistakes, pride, love that real doesn't just disappear. Elena smiled in the gathering darkness. I love you, Marcus Richardson. I love you too, Dr. Elena Richardson. As they sat together in the garden Elena had always dreamed of, in the house where their children slept safely, surrounded by the life they had built together from the wreckage of their past. Both of them understood that they had found something more valuable than Marcus's fortune. They had found their way home to each other. Inside the house, Carmen got up for a glass of water and saw her parents on the porch swing through the kitchen window. She smiled and went back to bed, secure in the knowledge that some happy endings were real and that her family was one of the lucky ones. The next morning would bring new challenges, new opportunities to help other families find their second chances, and the daily joys and struggles of raising children and building a life together. But tonight, in their garden under the stars, Marcus and Elena Richardson were exactly where they belonged.